Hey folks, my name is Alex Moon. I'm a developer advocate here at WP Engine. Today we're going to talk about using WPGraphQL Smart Cache on our WP Engine hosting platform. We have a GraphQL installed, it's working, and as you can see, we've made a query here, and we know GraphQL is working because of this xGraphQL URL here, which is good to know. But there's no caching on this, right? There's no cache control headers, nothing else has happened. Let's go ahead and activate Smart Cache and you'll see how the headers change. All right, let's make that query again. Hey, we got a couple more headers here. So notably, we have xGraphQL keys, which are the keys being returned by our query. And we have this query ID, which identifies our query. I could use that query ID or this test query that I've also added here. So, and then finally, most importantly, we've got these cache control headers that have been added by Smart Cache. This is kind of a standard format for Smart Cache. Right now, Smart Cache does not allow you to modify these other than by changing the TTL, that 360 number. So let's go ahead and do that. We can come into GraphQL settings here, and we can up this to, let's say, 500 seconds. We'll save that, remake our query, and now our max age and our smax age have bumped up to 500. Alternatively, we can check out our GraphQL documents. We have a test query here, and we can specifically set this higher or lower. So maybe we want this to be 24 hours. We'll update that query, and then this query alone will have longer headers. Keep this in mind for later. So this website here we're looking at is on my local server. All right, so we've seen what this looks like on a local website. Let's go ahead and hop over to our WP Engine hosting here. We now have it registered as a domain, and we've updated our query here in our terminal. We can go ahead and execute that. Notice we still have our query ID, our GraphQL URL, our keys. So we know Smart Cache is working on this server. We've added a powered by WP Engine, and we start seeing other things. Let's look at this cache control header. So the first thing you'll notice is it says 600. And we clearly have our cache control max age set to 300. I can assure you this isn't overridden in the individual query we're making. And you'll also notice the smax age disappeared. So this is kind of the first major caveat is our WP Engine varnish config is very opinionated from years of work. And one of the things it does is it sets very specific cache control headers. You'll notice here we do also set this xorg cache control. So this is the origin cache control header, and you'll see the correct 300 here and must revalidate along with that smax age header. So that's a little bit annoying. We'll get into how to fix that here in a bit, but right now just know that anything you set time-wise less than 600 seconds will get set to 600 seconds here by our varnish layer. So if we go ahead and set this to, let's say, 900, we can make this query again, but it's cached. So let's clear those caches, make that query again, and now we'll say cache control. We'll see that says 900 here, and both in our origin and in our actual cache control. So we do have control over what this cache control header sets. We just only have control over the TTL if it's greater than 600. You will also notice this xcacheable header. That is set by our varnish layer, and it does have our TTL in it. So this will come up later when we want to verify what that TTL is actually on varnish. I want to make one final note. Varnish is purged by both TTLs and keys. So these keys that we find in GraphQL keys are attached to the body of this response and cached. And the Smart Cache plugin's bread and butter is when it sees, hey, a post with this ID or a node or whatever it is, or this query as a whole gets validated, by editing a post, by hitting the cache purge button, whatever it is, Smart Cache goes in and sends a command to Varnish to purge just this cache data. Right? If I have 3 different queries that have all different data in them, only one of my 3 will be purged if a post is only contained in one of those 3. But if there's one post that's in common across all 3 of those, then all 3 of those responses will be purged. So that's really powerful because it means we're not just randomly purging based on time, we're only purging content when the content actually changes from our cache. TTLs, though, in Varnish, if that is reached before a specific key is purged, then the entire thing is still purged. That's a really great backup. For instance, Smart Cache tracks all the updates, edits, deletes, additions of posts. However, if settings are changed, Smart Cache doesn't currently track those changes. That means, but yet some of your settings in WordPress can affect the responses you get from GraphQL. So, TTLs are important for Varnish as well, but it's not their primary method. This generally means you can set your Varnish TTLs quite long. Let's talk advanced network, right? This is the network cache in your portal, and this is cached out at the edge by Cloudflare. You'll notice on our response that while we got a hit from Varnish here, our CF cache status is dynamic. And this means that Cloudflare is not caching it. This is because by default, Cloudflare does not cache HTML or JSON, JSON being the important one for our cases here. But as you can see here, we got a switch here for Edge full page cache. And this means that we can start caching HTML and JSON on our site. So let's go ahead and enable that. And let's make that query again. And you'll see a couple things. So our X cache hit now went up to 2. CF is still dynamic, so it might be taking a second to get this configuration in. Let's try this again. All right, there it is. So X cache hit 3. So we know we've made another cache. Now, CF says it's miss. A miss response does not mean it's not cacheable, it just means it didn't have it yet in the cache. So it made that additional response back to Varnish. Varnish fulfilled that cached request, and it should now, if we make this for a 4th time, we'll now see a CF cache status as hit. We'll also see an age here, 26 seconds. There we go. And you will see our X cache, though, has stopped going up. And I can continue to make this request, and while the age here will go up, because that's from Cloudflare, and we'll continue to see a hit, our X caches won't count will not increase, because we are not going back to Varnish, right? We are only getting this response served from Cloudflare at the edge. We talked about how Varnish is purged based on keys and time. The Edge full page cache on Advanced Network is only purged via time. Smart Cache is not hooked in to purge that based on keys at this time. So that's an important thing to know, that this cache control header of 900 is now being honored by Cloudflare. We'll demonstrate that in a second here. So right now, both Varnish at this 900, Edge full page cache, and any caches downstream, whether it's a network cache on the consumer's network or their browser specifically, are going to cache this for 900 seconds. Maybe we want that, but this isn't ideal. So let's say user goes to our site, hits a page, GraphQL request is made, that gets cached for 900 seconds. They're going to, every time they refresh that page, leave and come back, they're going to get that same response served by their browser for that 900 seconds. That's a while to wait for a cache to invalidate. So you might be tempted to come in here on your query or on your GraphQL settings and drop this cache down to, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, right? What's it? It's 5 minutes. Uh, what happens? Oh, we got to purge our cache to make sure we see things correctly. All right, so we see a miss, and on Cloudflare and Varnish, let's do that again, and we should see, yep, we see a hit here. Don't be worried that this Varnish still says miss. Remember, uh, both of these caches got reset, um, revalidated at the same time. So most importantly though, remember, by setting our max age to 300, we can't go below 10 minutes on Varnish. And because Varnish is overriding this cache control, both Cloudflare and our user's browser are getting set to 600. So this is really limiting us at the moment. That's not great. Let's play around with this. We got other tools in our toolbox. So, but what happens to the user's request is their browser finally invalidates. It goes to ask for Cloudflare, assuming they're the first user. And Cloudflare may or may not have an updated request. Maybe another user has since refreshed that cache. If it hasn't, it's going to go all the way back to the server because Varnish's TTL is hit too. It's going to go all the way back to the server, and all those caches are going to get reprimed at the same time. That is not ideal. Let's talk about how we can put some tiered caching in place and have each of these caches do what they're good at. So, step one, let's set, we've got to be able to control our both edge cache and our browser cache separately from Varnish. And theoretically, we want to control those, be able to set something potentially less than 600 seconds. So let's go back to our portal, and this is where we come down to web roles. Here we have the option to creating various rules from access, rewrite, and importantly for our case, headers. So let's talk through this rule I've set up. So we want to set our cache control header. We're going to give it a unique value. 10 and 20 seconds is not the right values for this. We're going to do this for a demo. For those who don't know, SMax age affects shared devices. So this is going to be Edge full page cache. The max age affects, if there's no SMax age, it affects shared caches. If there is an SMax age, it only affects private caches, right? So our browser will use this max age 10. And this is kind of the general structure we want. We want our browsers to have the shortest cache, right? If user does a quick refresh, if they're navigating in and out of page within a short amount of time, we want them to serve that, get a quick response from their browser cache. Maybe you set this to a minute or 30 seconds even in a real world situation. Then our edge cache, we want it relatively short still, but we don't want it to be invalidating so often that users are having to go all the way back to Varnish, because that Varnish response times, so for me in testing, are around 200 milliseconds, plus or minus. If you, let's say it's 250 milliseconds to go to Varnish, it's about 25 milliseconds to go to the edge. So we want stuff cached there for a little bit longer within a reasonable time frame. So realistically, I might set this to anywhere from like 1 to 5 minutes, where I'm okay with seeing stale data and requests for that time period. If I really need to purge something, I can manually go and purge it. All right, so that sets our cache control. Now, we have to attach this to conditions, so when we want this. And most importantly, we want this to only affect GraphQL responses. So there's a lot of things we could do this based on. I have found the easiest is to base it on the xGraphQL keys header, because I know if that's attached, Smart Cache is doing its thing. And it's got to be it's a GraphQL request with Smart Cache enabled, right? Right now I have this disabled, right? This xGraphQL keys is never going to equal the value of something. If I flip this to not equal to something, then anything that's not something will apply this header. So now this will apply to all GraphQL responses. Let's go ahead and hit apply on that. And let's see how this affected our headers. Well, we still got caches, right? So let's go back and let's purge our caches one more time. And remember here, this is still set to 300. So we'll get to that here. All right. What do we see here? Our cache control header now has our max age of 10, our S max age of 20, and a must revalidate. This X origin cache control header is still here. And this is X cacheable. Notice that says short. In WP engine speak, that means 600 milliseconds. Or not milliseconds, just 600 seconds, right? And if we do this again, you notice we get an expired, right? So that means we went past this 20 seconds. If we do this quickly again, we will get a hit and we get an age of 10, and we can see that age sit and clock up with every request. And when it hits 20 seconds, we will see an expired again. Then it refreshed in the background, and we now have a hit again. So what happens when this says expired? Well, this said expired, but our cache hit was 2, whereas before our cache hit was 1. So when it said expired, we still hit a cache. We hit varnish cache instead of having to go all the way back to the server, right? So this creates a tiered caching system where our client, like our browser, it'll invalidate a cache every 10 seconds. Our edge network can be in a longer period of time. For demo purposes, we've done 20 seconds, and then that'll go back to varnish. So now varnish is a really important cache, and we don't really want it expiring every 300 seconds. Now we can, because we can control those other caches separately, we can set this to a day or longer. We want to rely on the tag-based cache invalidation as our primary thing. We want that stuff in the cache as long as is reasonable. All right, so let's make a request, and there we go. You notice our cache control is the same. You can see our origin cache controls have gone up to 86400, and this is where this X cacheable comes in play. We can see that yes, it's cacheable, and it's done at that 1 day TTL. But our cache control is still at 20 and 10. This means we now have an extremely long TTL, and we can make that even longer for varnish. And hopefully it's primarily going to be purged based on tags and not on time. That said, even if once a day we have to reprime varnish, that's okay, because the edge cache can now be our primary cache that's invalidating quicker and serving responses quicker. Again, you can play around with exactly what these times are. There's no reason you couldn't make this significantly longer if you didn't want to. And you can come in here and play with these TTLs here in our web roles to make these something more reasonable. Like I might do a browser for, let's say, 60 seconds and do 5 minutes out at the edge. It's expired. Let's see if we can get it updated. We've got to clear our caches. When you play with these things, you got to clear your cache a lot to see your changes. Don't forget to do that. Did I hit save on my web role? That is usually another. Yep, that should be saved. It's just taking a second. There we go. To get updated and propagate through the system. So now we have all the things working like we want to. All right, one final thing. So on the cache control headers, that's an HTTP standard. So any downstream shared caches are going to follow this SMaxH. And we may or may not want them to do that. For instance, a lot of networks or other CDNs that either you've put there or your customer or site visitors network has put in place might honor this SMaxH. And if you don't want them to purge on the same, maybe you want them to act more like this max age 60, um, then you can specifically target those using this max age, but we can specifically target Cloudflare uniquely. So if there's some reason we want to target Cloudflare uniquely from any other cache out there on the network that might use that max age, we can come in here and we can specifically set a CDN-cache control, right? This is a standard set by Cloudflare. I'll link to this doc in the notes. And you can specifically target Cloudflare uniquely, right? Maybe you want to stay away, revalidate information here, or something unique that only applies to Cloudflare. So go ahead and check this out. If we save that rule that targets that header, we can make that request, and we see the CDN cache control header is 1224, and then our age is going to count up to and expire at 24 seconds instead of 300. We'll give this a second. And there we go. After 24 seconds, it expired. All right, so now you know how to override. Thanks for watching this video. If you like caching as much as I do, hit that button. And if you want more hot tips on caching and the WP Engine platform, don't forget to subscribe. We hope this is helpful, that you can use these powerful web roles to control and optimize caching on the WP Engine platform for your website. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later.